And now I'm honored to move us to our next panel and to welcome an incredible group of leaders to the panel on divestment movements and transitioning away from fossil fuels. All over the world, communities are rising to say enough is enough. We can hear that just from our last session. And fossil fuel corporations and financial institutions that prop them up are driving climate chaos, violating human indigenous rights, and fueling deforestation and environmental destruction. So in response, there's been a powerful divestment movement, and they're continuing to grow, building strategic, coordinated, and rooted in frontline resistance. These movements are halting pipelines, blocking new fossil fuel infrastructure, and organizing to cut off extraction at the source. And at WECAN, we've had the honor of working alongside many of the leaders on this panel, including in co-directing Indigenous women's divestment delegations with Michelle Cook, who you'll be hearing from shortly. And these delegations are acts of resistance and reclamation. They create space for Indigenous women and frontline leaders to sit across a table from the very institutions that are financing destruction, banks, insurers, and asset managers, and to speak truth to power, and to say to them that their money is funding rights violations, that their portfolios are fueling planetary collapse, and really having a dialogue with them. And some of this work we do is in a workshop format. Sometimes it's more fiery directly on a particular project, but we need to be in relationship with the people who are financing. This is climate justice in action, exposing power, holding institutions accountable, and as we've been talking about, shifting the narrative so communities and the earth are no longer treated as sacrifice zones. These delegations have directly led to hundreds of millions of dollars in fossil fuel divestments, catalyzed investigations, policy shifts, and increased public pressure across the finance sector, which is what we want. We want to push that agenda. And the message is clear. We must stop the flow of money to fossil fuels. So for a lot of the discussions that we've had thus far in the Assembly, we've been really talking about different kinds of advocacy with governments and what we're doing on the ground and what actions we can take individually and collectively. And this conversation is adding to that, which is now not just addressing governments, but directly to the financiers themselves of fossil fuels, and really talking to them about instead directing the resources of those finances toward renewable, regenerative, community-led solutions that honor and protect life. And how do we actually get into that dialogue with them? Now, to help ground this conversation, I want to begin with a short video to show one aspect of this work. There's many aspects of this work, but we wanted to show you this because it's very inspiring and fiery and really brings us into some of the heated debate on this conversation. And then afterwards, I'm going to introduce our speakers.
The decisions you make as Credit Suisse and the Swiss people affect those of us downstream from your actions. You sit here comfortably in your privilege, while our communities bear the risks of your investments with our very health, our lives. We face a future without clean water as you reap your dividends and returns. What do you as Swiss people hold sacred? To us, water is life, to all of us. I request that you directly answer my questions now.
Thank you. I will answer your question, as I said, at the end when everybody has spoken. And the next speaker is Monica Verdin.
I'm a shareholder, and I request that you answer our questions individually.
Thank you very much. I'm the chairman who runs this AGM, and I decided I will answer at the end, which is my right, and I have to live with it. Thank you.
I'm here to let the investors know in the Kinder Morgan Pipeline Expansion Project how directly affected we are and how many times that we have opposed this project. We've been marginally ignored within that process, and the consultation that we had required has not been.
Can you guarantee me and my nation that you will no longer have business relationships and provide finance for Kinder Morgan Company.
We are here today to let Credit Suisse and all the other banks that are financing these projects that we have not given our consent, that we find water and clean air and land to be critical infrastructure, not pipelines. We're all citizens of this planet, and what happens in our homelands will affect the people here in Switzerland.
For over a year and a half, we have tried to pursue all legal avenues possible, petitioning our state and federal agencies to conduct environmental impact studies, yet we have been unheard. And our resistance to this corporate colonialism that is tied to carbon extraction is growing, especially during these times where corporations are influencing our government to pass laws restricting our rights. What changes has Credit Suisse made to its due diligence and risk assessment processes following Dakota Access Pipeline?
Investing in a company is just that, whether it's project level or corporate level financing. We need you to stop financing these dangerous companies. Two of the banks our delegation also met with, UBS and DNB, who we provided the same exact information to, chose not to renew their credit facilities with ETP. Yet Credit Suisse has taken no action and has made no statement.
Not once in these calculations of profits is the loss of indigenous peoples' culture on this planet mentioned as a risk. Credit Suisse has a choice to do the right thing. So until then, indigenous peoples will continue to wage and escalate a mass globalization, calling for accountability of Credit Suisse in the financial industry. We will call for divestment, we will call for a boycott, we will call for the sanction of Credit Suisse for these indigenous human rights violations by these oil companies that you are supporting by any and all means necessary.
I ask that the Swiss people stand with us. I ask that you hold Credit Suisse accountable and say no. No, we will not fund these projects that are hurting people and committing human and indigenous rights abuses.
So that's a good way to kick off this really important conversation. I'm so honored with all of the speakers who are here. We're going to be first hearing from Roishetta Sibley-Ozane. She is the founder of Vessel Project of Louisiana and co-coordinator of the Gulf South Fossil Finance Hub from the US. Then we'll be hearing from Heffa Schücking. She is founder, management, and campaign strategist at Urgewald in Germany. Then we'll be hearing from Olivia Bisa Tirko, who is Chapra. She is president of the autonomous territorial government of the Chapra Nation in Peru. Then we'll be hearing from Ayumi Fukakusa, who is the executive director of climate change and energy campaigner at Friends of the Earth Japan from Japan. And then we'll be hearing, to wrap it up, Michelle Cook, who is Diné. She is founder of Divest, Invest, Protect from Turtle Island, USA. And also, as you saw, was in the video that we just showed. So I'm really excited about this conversation and would love for you, Roishetta, to take us away. Please, you have the floor, and thanks for being with us.
Thanks so much, Osprey. That was an amazing video and an amazing display of all of the efforts that we collectively as women are doing to stop what's causing harm to not only our bodies, our children, our families, our communities, and this entire world. So thank you for starting off with that video. Hello, family, community, brothers and sisters, and to everyone out there who is currently on this call, who've given up your time to be here to listen to us. I always want to start off with gratitude because you could be anywhere else, but you are giving up your time to be here today to listen to us, and that is very, very important. And for some of you is a first step in trying to figure out where you stand in this climate fight. So thank you for giving us your time today. As mentioned, I am the co-founder and co-director of the Go Fossil Finance Hub, and I am also the founder, director, and CEO of the Vessel Project of Louisiana. I work at the intersection of all of these injustices that we face in our communities, but also trying to ensure that my community members have what they need to fight, and that is food, safe water, a safe place to stay. Those things are imperative in order to fight against these evils that are coming at us. But today, we find ourselves at a critical crossroads in our fight against climate change, a crisis that is increasingly impacting our communities with more frequent severe weather events. As stated earlier, I live in Louisiana in the United States along the Gulf Coast. We are seeing more hurricanes, more tornadoes, more flooding, and even wildfires here in Louisiana. We know that something is wrong. And in order to mitigate this problem, we know that the answer to this is to phase off fossil fuels, since fossil fuels are the primary source of these emissions that are causing these climate-induced disasters. These emissions, like burning coal, oil, and gas across all sectors, must be stopped immediately. It is not just important, it is imperative. Enough is enough. However, this transition cannot be achieved through, piecemeal efforts. It requires a comprehensive approach, which I'm sure you've heard from other speakers on previous panels. That is both just and equitable, not just coming to communities with ideas that you've schemed up somewhere else, but in line with what community members want. We must elevate the voices of frontline communities, those who have suffered the most from environmental degradation and social injustice. Women, in particular, are leading this vital fight. They must be supported, they must receive resources, and they must receive funding in order to continue to care for their families and their communities. Their resilience and leadership are indispensable, and as we navigate this complex transition, we must continue to put women first and foremost. As we move away from fossil fuel economies, we must also ensure that the clean and renewable energy solutions we adopt do not replicate the injustices of our past. This is what we mean by a just transition. It must be what community members want, what communities need, and what they have asked for, not just what we feel like they need or we feel like they deserve in their communities. We cannot allow practices such as community displacement, human rights violations, and environmental destruction to persist under the guise of progress. This new approach must be grounded in the principles of climate and environmental justice, ensuring that those who have been historically marginalized, Black, Indigenous, people of color, women, that they are not continuously abused by this extractive system, but that they are prioritized and empowered in the transition to renewable energy. Community-led and community-owned renewable energy projects are essential to this mission. These initiatives break away from the corporate top-down models that have dominated our energy systems for far too long. By redistributing wealth and ownership, we empower communities, especially women, to take control of their energy futures. This transformation not only reduces costs and enhances access to energy, but also strengthens democracy and protects human rights. Because that is what we're trying to do here. We are fighting for people. We don't want to harm people in the fight to save people. That is not the answer. To effectively address the climate crisis, our global transition to renewable energy must be scaled and centered around community involvement and community leadership. This comprehensive approach requires us to tailor our strategies to meet the specific needs of diverse regions and socio-ecological contexts. This is not just an environmental imperative, it is a moral obligation to ensure that every voice is heard and every community is supported. The challenges we face on this journey toward a just transition are significant. Barriers erected by corporations, financial institutions such as the banks, the 6 largest banks in the U.S., JP Morgan Chase, Citibank, Goldman Sachs, JP Morgan Chase, if I didn't say that one, Morgan Stanley. All of these banks are contributing to the climate chaos that we are currently facing, and they must be held accountable. Banks can no longer fund and finance these projects because if they do, they are funding and financing environmental racism. They are funding and financing the death of our families and our children, and enough is enough. The vital work being done by women and communities in advocating for a just transition cannot be overstated. That we are fighting not only for sustainable solutions, but also for the well-being of our families and our communities while embodying the spirit of resilience and leadership that we desperately need. Support women, listen to women, fund women. We need a just transition, but it not only do we need a just transition, but we need a fast, fully funded, equitable, feminist phase out of fossil fuels now, not tomorrow. Time is running out. Women have shown over and over and over again that we have the solution. Yet we are not trusted. We are not supported. We are pushed away. We are expected to do things of old, like just stay in the kitchen and cook and raise the kids and tend to the garden. Those days are over. But because we possess those skills, we know how to nurture this planet. We know how to feed a community. We know how to survive and thrive. So listen to us, support us. This report that was released by WECAN outlines how women are winning, how to get to a just transition. It showcases that the solutions that we need are already here. We don't have to make them up. We don't have to reinvent them. But what we have to do is move towards a renewable future and get off of fossil fuels of the past. I didn't wake up this morning on my daily walk and see a dinosaur walking in my community. Why did I see a flare coming from a fossil fuel company? If dinosaurs are extinct, so should fossil fuels be. It is time out. Enough is enough. Thank you all so much. And thank you, Osprey, for always welcoming me and being so inviting and highlighting the different ways that each of us are fighting, taking care of ourselves barely, taking care of our children, taking care of our communities, and taking care of this one planet that we all share and we all call home. Not just me is impacted, not just the women on this panel are impacted, but everyone on this call, everyone on planet Earth is impacted by the decisions that are being made here in the United States, in DC, in New York, by these banks in Japan, by banks and insurers in Europe. All of us are being impacted because we all breathe air. We all drink water. So let's all fight together. Let's hold hands. Let's stand tall. Let's support women. Let's ensure women have money and resources and funding. Let's continue to fight. Let's continue to center joy. Remember our North Star, and let's keep going because enough is enough. Thank you.
Thank you, Roishetta. Oh my goodness. Thank you for that powerful intervention and your incredible leadership as always. We love you so much and we stand with you, putting a lot of links to Roishetta's work in the chat. It's really important to follow her work and her leadership and the campaign she's been leading, and just giving us that great firepower and energy to go forward. Thank you so much, Roishetta. And with that, I'm going to hand the floor to Heffa. Heffa, you have the floor. Thank you.
Thank you so much. My name is Heffa Schücking. I'm director of the German Environment and Human Rights Organization, Urgewald, and it's a real honor to be here tonight. When I think back over the past months, I think we've all experienced moments of shock and dismay. Shock at the speed with which the Trump administration is dismantling environmental regulation and basic democratic rights. Shock over the advances of right-wing European parties like the AfD, whose leaders say they want to tear down Germany's windmills of shame, as they call them. Dismay over the growing number of threats, arrests, and lawsuits against environmental defenders. If our current reality was a movie, its title would be something like The Fossil Fuel Empire Strikes Back. But the fossil fuel industry and its political allies are too late. In 2024, solar and wind accounted for 90% of new power capacity that was installed worldwide. Renewables, and especially solar, have become the cheapest option for building new power plants in almost every country in the world. The clock cannot be turned back. This is important to remember because the backlash we are witnessing now is not a reflection of our powerlessness. It is a reaction to our power. If I think back in 2018 already, Peabody Energy, one of the world's largest coal companies, wrote in its filing to the Securities Exchange Commission, this is a direct quote, unfavorable lending policies and divestment efforts could significantly affect demand for our products and securities. And when Texas and 10 further Republican states sued major asset managers last year, their main accusation was that a cartel of investors was weaponizing their shares for green energy goals. The fossil fuel industry understands all too well that finance is its Achilles heel. Over 90 financial institutions now rule out lending, insurance, and investment for companies that are still developing new coal mines, power plants, or coal transport infrastructure. Almost 100 major financial institutions have taken commitments to exit coal financing by 2030 in OECD countries and by 2040 in the rest of the world. And many of Europe's largest insurers and reinsurers now refuse to underwrite the development of new upstream oil and gas development. Italy's Generali recently went one step further and became the first insurer to also include insurance coverage for new LNG terminals and gas-fired power plants. And in 2024, two of the world's largest banks, BNP Paribas and Crédit Agricole, the 8th and the 10th largest bank in the world, announced that they will no longer issue bonds for oil and gas companies. This came only a few months after the world's 11th largest pension fund, it's a Dutch pension fund called PFZW, divested over 300 oil and gas companies. And what was really interesting was the statement of the pension fund's chairman, which said, I quote again, "The dialogue with the oil and gas sector on climate has made it clear to us that most fossil fuel companies are not prepared to adapt their business model to Paris." Pension funds, insurers, and banks increasingly realize that the 5% of their portfolios that are invested in the old energy world puts the other 95% of their investments at risk. Today, investors representing around 20 trillion US dollars in assets under management have excluded coal companies from their portfolios. All of this didn't happen by chance. It happened because of relentless campaigning, such as in the video we saw right at the beginning of this session, which was really, really inspiring for someone who works on European banks. So this happened because of strong campaigns, strong networks, and hard data. Data is our specialty at Urgewald. Last year, our finance research team set up the Investing in Climate Chaos website, a website where you can view the fossil fuel holdings of over 7,000 institutional investors worldwide, a kind of sister website to the Banking on Climate Chaos site. And each year, our corporate research team digs through the annual reports of over 6,000 coal, oil, and gas companies to compile Urgewald's two signature databases, the Global Coal Exit List and the Global Oil and Gas Exit List. We think of these as divestment to-do lists for financial institutions. They are crucial tools. Many financial institutions use them to actually shape their policies or to examine the degree of their exposure to fossil fuel companies or to sort certain companies out of their portfolios. Activists and NGOs use these databases to expose fossil fuel expansion and to fight projects like the East African crude oil pipeline or the build-out of LNG export terminals on the Gulf of Mexico. Disrupting the bond between finance and the fossil fuel industry isn't easy, but my message is it's doable, it's effective, and it's the way that will win. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Heffa, for that great presentation and also for the incredible work that you do at your organization. I mean, I know how much WECAN has really enjoyed partnering with you at different times on our campaigns, and the research that you do in the data is so valuable, as you mentioned. And that I think it's really great to also hear about, the string of successes that we've had as a divestment movement. So I appreciate you highlighting that. And we have a long ways to go, but the fact is we have made inroads and they need to continue. So thank you for pointing that out and for the critical work that you're doing. And with that, I'd love to bring Olivia, Bisa, Tirko into the conversation. I think you just jumped on, Olivia, so I wanted to let you know I introduced you earlier. And I just want to remind our audience that Olivia will be speaking in Spanish, so please make sure that you utilize your translation function at the bottom of your screen. And Olivia, it's great to see you. I haven't seen you, I think, since the COP in at the UNCBD in Colombia. And I wish you well, and I'm so glad you could join us. You have the floor.
Good afternoon, everybody. Thank you, dear Osprey, for inviting me to be here as part of this important panel so that we can remember and value women's work throughout the whole planet to save our Earth system. I'd like to introduce myself. I'm Olivia Bisa. I am president of the autonomous territory of the Chapra in Peru. We have been working for a long time on resistance and care for our territories and all that they contain. This work is increasingly difficult and increasingly dangerous. It's risky work because every year the Peruvian state is more and more under sway by corporations and institutional finance institutions. They continue lending to Peru, and making it so that they can open more and more wells, oil wells in the Amazon. And not long ago, Peru called for an open call for multinational oil corporations to exploit in Block 74. And we did a joint statement by all indigenous peoples, and our victory was that they decided to abandon that open call. And so this is a victory for us as indigenous peoples. We are dedicated to protecting our territory and also our safety. Our safety is threatened when we do this resistance work, because they blame us and our resistance, our defense of our territory, when oil corporations don't end up coming to oil block 76. And our lives are at risk. We are persecuted. We are threatened. But this is a struggle that we always tell the whole world about. We only want to take care of our forest. We as women are protecting humanity. We are guaranteeing that the human species can continue to exist through our defense of Mother Earth. We are women who give life. And all human beings, all living beings, are born from their mother. And we women must be able to participate and have a voice and a vote in the decisions that may affect us in our lives, in our territories. We indigenous peoples, indigenous women, we don't have a life without our territory. And if our territory is bleeding, it's as if we ourselves were bleeding and losing our children. It's as if our womb were ripped out. We have this deep tie with our Mother Earth. Life on Earth depends on what we do here. It depends on our land. It depends on what the land can generate. And we should not be killing ourselves like this. We've done so much international advocacy, thanks also to the support of our allies, such as Osprey, who always supports us. We've spoken to JP Morgan, Bank of America, and Santander. We've spoken to HBC. We've told these banks that we want them to finance life. We women do work in our territories that's a powerful alternative that allows us to develop ourselves without the need of exploiting fossil fuels. In our life plan, we have economic development alternatives that have nothing to do with the exploitation of fossil fuels. We're also looking for alternatives that allow us to change our mechanism for energy transition. It is important for our struggles and our actions and our work to be taken seriously and valued, because the work that we've been doing, we women around the world, is designed to save the world. It's not about International Women's Day, it's our everyday concern. We want our children to enjoy good health, a good environment, a good life. That's why we're here, and that's why we're all united. We must join forces even more. They're starting wars just to increase the price of oil, and this is a tactic that they're using to boost oil and gas prices. And it's time to really open our eyes and say, that's enough. There are lots of alternatives. And not just to fossil fuels, because if we continue using fossil fuels in this way, within about 10 or 20 years, we'll see that we've destroyed the earth. In my territory, we're seeing unprecedented forest fires. There was never a drought in my territory before, but now we have droughts. And it hurts your soul to see animals dying and burned up in these fires. Because, and animals dying because temperatures are rising and the temperature of the rivers is rising. It hurts so much to see our forests destroyed. And that's why the work that we do as women, as an Indigenous people, as Indigenous women, must be made visible, must be taken into account. Many times, in many spaces, we talk about how we women have to sacrifice our lives in order to be taken into account in international spaces, and that has to change. We need to change the world, including ourselves on this planet, so that we can save the planet. We need to work together with youth, kids, women, boys, everybody, so that we can save this planet. Nobody is separate from this. Nobody is not involved in this imperative to save the planet. It's a very important task. And we can't wait until the last minute. Many of our comrades, our fellow women, have been assassinated for the work that they do, but we continue defending the legacy of our grandparents. And I would like to really I'd like to thank you all and say that together we women can change the world and change history. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Olivia. And I really want to thank you for your leadership as a woman president of your entire nation. We send you so much support and respect. They're very fortunate to have you as their leader. I've been with Olivia in different spaces and meetings, and it's been incredible to hear her communicating with the financial institutions, with governments, to protect and defend her territories and her people, and in essence, all of us, for protecting her region, which is important to everyone around the world. And as she said, you know, the fact of the courage it takes to do this work with the violence and the incredible the risk that the women take for standing up is tremendous. And, you know, it's hard to imagine if you don't live in those communities, what's it like. But I just wanted to really acknowledge the incredible courage to do this work and the lives that are on the line. And I wanted to just mention that later on this week, as part of this assembly, we're going to be having a panel on the Escazú Agreement, which is a bilateral agreement in the Latin American and Caribbean region that we want to really highlight because though it is for that one region in the world, it's an incredibly important legislation that can protect women land defenders. And we want to really open that up and ensure that we all have access to knowledge of the Escazú Agreement and can support women land defenders in the LAC region with this particular legislation and protection for them. So with that, I would love to now hand the floor to Ayumi Fukakusa.
Hello, everyone. My name is Ayumi Fukakusa from Friends of the Earth Japan. I'm sorry that I could not join this panel live due to the time difference, but I truly appreciate this opportunity and feel so honored to be part of this important panel. I am a climate change and energy campaigner and working to stop Japanese government and the companies from financing dirty energy projects overseas, including nuclear, coal, and fossil gas. Over the past decade, Japan has faced international criticism for financing coal power projects abroad with huge public money. Japan was the top financier for coal power. Even after Japan joining international commitment to end such financing, Japan continued to support coal-fired power plants, particularly in countries like Indonesia and Bangladesh. And these projects have been devastating impact on local communities, leading to the loss of livelihood and even criminalization of those who resisted. Together with local farmers, fisherfolk, and local NGO partners and international partners, we campaigned to stop Japanese financing of coal. And thanks to persistent local resistance and joint work with both domestic and international allies, Japan finally stopped financing new coal projects abroad in 2022. This victory was a powerful example of people power and global solidarity. Through this campaign, we targeted mainly Japanese public financier, JBIC, Japan Bank for International Cooperation, backed by Japanese government. And the Japanese government often claimed that their technology was advanced and beneficial for so-called developing countries. But in reality, as I explained, the project brought harm to the communities, and also the exported plants used substandard technology. So they offered no help but brought more harm to communities. Many communities were left poorer after losing their livelihood. It was important for us to challenge the false narrative that these projects were a form of international cooperation or development assistance. Unfortunately, Japan has not given up on fossil fuel. Today, one of our biggest concerns is the aggressive financing of liquefied natural gas or LNG. Japan is one of the largest public financiers of LNG terminals, and historically, Japanese companies and also the government have a kind of pride of being leaders in the LNG market. But with domestic demand for LNG declining and also over-contracting, Japanese companies, those who are trading LNG, they are now pushing their excess supply into new markets across Asia by financing new LNG facilities in the region, while also investing in upstream and midstream operations in places like the United States or Mozambique. In Mozambique, Total Energy is leading massive LNG project. There are serious human rights violations allegations reported. And even though the project itself is led by French Total Energy, but Japanese companies and banks and the government collectively are the largest financial backers of this project. And in the United States, Japan is also the top financier of export terminals. Earlier this year, we hosted a powerful delegation from the United States to Tokyo. Manning Rollason from Texas, he shared how his life has been directly impacted by dirty energy projects. He said, while communities are suffering, companies are making huge profits. Sharon Wilson, she used her optical gas imaging camera to capture the methane pollutions, and she showed Japanese politicians the methane pollution from LNG infrastructure, making it crystal clear how harmful and how dirty LNG is. On the other hand, the companies and government are still claiming LNG is cleaner energy. Last year, a fisherfolk representative from Philippines also joined us in Japan to share his powerful story and demanded that Japan stop financing LNG in their country and all over the world. Ending financing for dirty energy is not only critical to solve the climate crisis, but it's also about protecting people's lives. For me, what matters most is listening to the voices of frontline communities and ensuring these voices reach to the financiers who continue to ignore the consequence of their investments. I know the economic and financial arguments of the project speaks to investors and financiers. And we should use these arguments actually strategically when we speak to financiers. But we must not forget that there are people in the middle of the fight, and it is also their duty, financiers' duty, to protect humans and the environment. Fighting these injustices is hard. It's about real people whose lives are being harmed by decisions made in boardrooms far away. I'm deeply sorry that Japanese government and banks have not yet ended their finance for these kind of harmful projects, but pressure is mounting, and more people are rising to demand climate justice. Once again, I'm sorry I couldn't join you live, but I hope this event goes well and inspires all of us to keep fighting for climate justice, for communities, and for justice. Thank you so much.
Thank you so much, Ayumi. I'm really glad that she was able to join us through video, and also really important to see how much this divestment movement is really international. You know, in a lot of the spaces we meet around this divestment work, it's amazing what is going on through grassroots and frontline leadership and different organizations all collecting around this divestment work. So it's really good to hear from her in Japan. And then I am so honored to bring my dear colleague on, Michelle Cook, who is the founder of Divest, Invest, Protect. Michelle, you have the floor. Thank you for joining us.
Well, good morning, everyone. Yat Michelle Cook Inishye, Hanagahni Nishlint. Scott Irish English Basis Chin Tobahi Dashich Scott Irish English Dashanale. My name is Michelle Cook. I was also recently given the name Pitehinupa, which means buffalo woman with two horns. And I was told to start introducing myself on those terms as well. I'm so thankful for the invitation today. With Osprey, as you've seen over the years, WECAN has been instrumental in bringing the voices of those who have been most impacted by corporate tyranny, by pollution, by extraction to the front lines of the financial industry to finally bring Indigenous women to the center of these places of power. And that was a historic work that we were able to do with WECAN, and I'm so thankful for that. You know, but we're still in this moment of crisis right now. You know, why is divestment important? Why does it remain important for the time that we're living in? Fundamentally, as we all know, we're on the brink of collapse. We see extinctions, we see accelerated corporate development, we see live-streamed genocide, we see whole nations of children crying out to the earth and to the heavens for mercy and for pity and for international law to be real, for there to be some kind of accountability to make the harm stop. This is where we're at. And we see just this past 2 years, we've seen epic and historic flooding in parts of southwestern Virginia, whole swaths of communities taken down by devastating floods. And despite the promises throughout centuries that coal development in Southwest Virginia will bring us progress, we have people there who still do not have homes, who still are mucking out mud from their homes, breaking their backs with no relief coming. They're still living like this in the so-called most advanced nation in the world, but yet we cannot send aid to the people who are living and enduring the front lines of climate change. The people of West Virginia and Southwest Virginia continue to need help. In Arizona, we see violence against women in the recent and tragic murder of Emily Pike, whose perpetrators remain at large today, missing and murdered Indigenous women and children. We have this still continuing. We have it here and all over the world, we continue to have our leadership under attack. Throughout the world, I think it was last year, 324 human rights defenders were missing or murdered or disappeared, most coming from South America, most fighting extraction industries. And not only are our leaderships being missing, murdered, and disappeared, but our leadership are also under attack personally from smear campaigns, from targeting, from an attempt to remove Indigenous leadership and to discredit them. So the Indigenous women who you see today, who you've seen throughout the weeks, are fighting incredible battles on many levels. And we have to continue to support them. And I'm so thankful for Osprey at WECAN, who throughout the years has continued to support my advocacy throughout the victories and throughout the attacks. I'm so thankful for you. You know, and we continue to see, you know, in every instance of our successes and in our victories, we see the reflection of repression. We see when we have in the power of our movements, of our social movements, we see the rise of criminalization over the past decade. When we look at our divestment movements, when we see the advances that we've made there, we also see a response and a rejection of ESG standards and almost a criminalization of ESG standards, where even investors are being told you cannot use climate as a reasoning to determine where your money is going or not. How repressive. We also see the power of Black Lives Matter and of people of color. We see the swing back of that pendulum in the against our movements for anti-racism, with now this anti-DEI initiative that has been federally mandated. So this is where we're at. We see even the power of our thoughts, of our methodologies of critical race theory. Who's afraid of critical race theory? Critical race theory is a methodology to understand history, but yet we even see our mental methodologies being criminalized, being erased. And I think if that shows anything to us, is that in every instance of our victories, we are seeing that reaction, and that reaction does not need to put fear into us. That reaction really needs to be proof that what we are doing is striking the heart of capital. What we are doing is striking the heart of that colonialism. What we're doing is striking the heart of that inequality, so much so that it has to restructure itself, has to make laws to stop us. That's how powerful we are, and they know it. And we have to believe in our own power. We see all of these repression as reflections, right? So how do we respond? How do we respond to all of these situations? Well, with Divest, Invest, Protect, we work to do the divestments, but we're also very much working to invest into initiatives that will be life affirming, even on a grassroots level with our organization that is still very small. We've been able to provide Narcan to Southwest Virginia, right? Even though Southwest Virginia has been promised the progress through coal development, Southwest Virginia remains the #1 capital for the highest rates of overdoses with pharmaceuticals. #1 in the United States. Why can't we have investments, not just in coal, not in coal? Why can't we have investments in rehab and recovery? But we're not seeing those investments. But we can do that. We can try to bring in that Narcan. We can try to bring in that harm reduction, because frankly, it's only in us that I trust. And after surviving those floods and seeing the devastation and seeing that no one is coming, it reaffirms that it is us that will save us. It's going to be our communities, our ability to organize, our ability to create networks of mutual aid in these moments of crisis that will bring us through. And I'm so thankful for the community efforts that have come out of all of these disaster zones to meet that need. And at Divest, Invest, Protect, we're still very much working on investing in the education of women and girls. We've been able to invest in a classroom in the holy lands of Uttar Pradesh, Vrindavan, in India, to provide a classroom space for around 50 students and girls who need this education to hopefully prevent marrying too young. So there's many ways that we can come forward, and we can invest, we can protect ourselves. And I just want to thank you for this, and to continue to look at our website, and you can learn more about us in the future. But just very thankful for the time here. And just to conclude, in the words of translated word of Antonio Gramsci, he said, the old world is dying, a new world struggles to be born. Now is the time of monsters. And as an Indigenous woman in 2025, I would tell him, now is the time of monsters, but it is also the time of the monster slayers. And that's who each and every one of us can become through prayer, through ceremony, through reconnecting to our spirit and to the source, to the real power. Anything is possible. Anything is possible. Anything is possible. So thank you for today, and look forward to learning more.
Thank you so much, Michelle. Really wonderful to hear your powerful words. And we've put links to Michelle's work in the chat for people to learn more, and really appreciate the analysis that you're offering and the powerful work you've been doing for years. We do need to close this session. I want to thank all of the speakers for your really powerful work. Again, we're highlighting all of them in the chat. I think this divestment work is critical. And maybe we could do just like a screen share for a moment, just so everyone can see you before we go. If people want to turn on their videos just for a minute, and Jacqueline can just share, what everyone is here. And I wanted to close by also mentioning that we have a report called The Gendered and Racial Impacts of the Fossil Fuel Industry and the Complicit Financial Institutions. It's a big mouthful, but it's an annual report that WECAN puts out every year. And so we wanted to make sure that that's available to you, and we put that in the chat. But it goes into precisely the gendered and racial impacts of on women's bodies because of the fossil fuel industry. But then it also outlines the companies that are involved and the banks who are financing those companies. And it's really meant to be for policymakers, grassroots leaders, for all of us to be able to have those resources to fight in our communities. So thank you all so much for being here with us. And we'll continue to see each other in the streets, in the boardrooms, in the hallways, and all the places to fight on. And as Roishetta said, enough is enough. Enough is enough. Thank you so much. And we'll move on to our next panel. Appreciate your comments. Thank you so much.